Hey guys, this is God of Politics. I'm going to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I will be doing the 2018 midterm elections had Hillary Clinton won the 2016 presidential election. Now, what we of course saw and usually see in midterms is that the party out of power gains seats in Congress, gains at the state level, gains at the Senate level, gains at the House level. And, Democrats really dodged a bullet in 2018 by having, a lot of red state Democrats up in a year that was overall very favorable to them. And that saved them in probably a lot of seats like West Virginia, seats like Ohio. So what would the map have looked like had Hillary Clinton have won the election? So I'm assuming that the House map and the Senate map would have looked the same. Maybe Democrats would have had a couple more seats, but in this map, they probably would have lost them anyway. And in the Senate, they probably would have had the same amount of seats. Maybe if she did really well, Democrats could have won in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but I doubt that, to be honest, because they even did run behind Hillary Clinton, those Democrats, Russ Feingold and Katie McGinty in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, respectively. So I'm going to go quite quickly on these states because, I am doing Senate, governor, and House elections, but I do want to talk about them just a little bit. So, of course, starting off with the states, you'd have Wyoming, Utah, you would also have Nebraska. I honestly think Missouri would go by a safe margin in this scenario. Claire McCaskill lost by about 6 percentage points, but, this probably would have been a Republican wave year because what you would have had is a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Democratic president who really didn't win because of her, her own popularity, but rather because of the other candidates' unpopularity. And that's part of the reason that Trump won in 2018, and we know in 2016, and we know how that turned out in 2018. But had Hillary Clinton won, she would have been working with a Congress that had not worked with Obama at all and probably was not going to work with her. And they wouldn't really have a mandate to since she wasn't very popular. And so not much would have gotten done, and there wouldn't have been much motivation to turn out voters for her in the midterms. And so a state like Missouri, I think, would have gone up to a safe margin, as well as Tennessee. You had Phil Bredesen running, but it still would have been a safe state, regardless of a blue wave year or not. Both Mississippi special elections in this scenario, you also would have had North Dakota would have been a safe state and ended up being a safe state anyway. And that's actually going to be all of these safe states. I know it looks weird to see states like Indiana not in the safe column, but if you do remember, Democrats did have incumbents there, and while they ended up losing, I don't think they'd lose by safe margins even in this scenario. So safe states for the Democrats, they'd win California, Washington, they'd win Hawaii, of course. They would win, probably Minnesota would have gone by a safe margin. Amy Klobuchar is very, very popular, and I think that she still would have won by a safe margin. New York, Vermont with Bernie Sanders. Technically, that's an independent seat, but he caucuses with the Democrats. Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine. Angus King probably still would have won by a safe margin. New Jersey could have been a bit closer because you have Bob Menendez, who wasn't very popular, but, Republicans didn't have a good candidate. They had Bob Hugin, not a good candidate there. Delaware, Maryland would have both been safe states as well. Virginia, I won't put it in safe just because, it would have been close overall. New Mexico probably still would have been a safe state because you had Gary Johnson running for the Libertarians there. And now the likely margin states, I'm going to put, I think Indiana would become a likely margin. I forgot the exact margin of what it was, what it turned out to be in 2018, but it would have been an easy win for Republicans, as well as I think Texas probably would have been a likely margin. Beto O'Rourke would not have gotten nearly as much attention. And I don't think Ted Cruz would have been as unpopular, and more Republicans would have turned out to vote for him. So I think that seat would have gone to the Republicans. Now, the likely states for the Democrats, let's see if there are any. Actually, Virginia, yeah, that would have been a likely margin seat. Tim Kaine would have won. Or actually, the interesting thing is, because Tim Kaine was a senator, so this might have actually been a little bit closer. I'll actually put this in a lean because, I forgot Tim Kaine was the VP candidate for Hillary Clinton. His seat would have had to been replaced, so maybe I'll put that in a lean margin just because it would have been a seat with an incumbent that hadn't have been there for very long. So looking at lean states for the Republicans now, Florida probably would have been a lean state, to be honest. Bill Nelson didn't win even with a blue wave year, and I don't think he would have won in this scenario either. Arizona, I also think, would have been a lean margin state, and I think West Virginia would have been a lean margin state. Ohio probably would have been a lean margin state as well. Montana would have been a lean margin state. And I don't know if any of these are Pennsylvania. I won't put those in there for now, but I'll put all of these seats at lean. I'll also put Nevada at lean, so you can see Republicans are up to 58 seats here. For the Democrats, I think Tina Smith probably would have won by a tilt margin, to be honest. It's kind of hard to tell. Maybe she would have lost, but I still think that she would have won, especially with Amy Klobuchar at the top of the ticket helping her. For these three states here, I think Bob Casey still would have won by a lean margin. I think Debbie Stabenow probably would have won as well. But I think Tammy Baldwin would have won as well. It's hard to tell how these races would have gone because Tammy Baldwin won very easily, Tina Smith won very easily, Bob Casey won very easily, Debbie Stabenow won very easily. How much of a shift would there have been to the Republican Party in this scenario? It's kind of hard to tell. I could see both or three, maybe even four of these races going towards the Republicans, but it's really hard to tell in this scenario. So I'm just going to put it at an overall 58 Republicans, 42 Democrats. Insane to see. Republicans would have gained Montana, Ohio, West Virginia, Florida, and they would have kept a lot of swing seats like Nevada and Arizona. So they would have had a net gain of 4 seats. Now going to the governor elections here, I don't like using 270 to win, but I am using it. I don't like having all of the ads here. I don't like, the overall, user interface of it, but I am using it anyway because it does have the 2018 interactive map still there. So now for the governor races, I'm going to make sure I don't forget, when you have blue state Republican governors, red state Democratic governors, but Maryland would have been a safe state just to get that right out of the way. Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Alaska, as well as Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska. South Dakota, actually, I'll put that in likely margin because Democrats did have a good candidate there that made it like a 3-point race. And Vermont would have been a safe margin. New Hampshire would have been a safe margin. Massachusetts would have been a safe margin there. And that's probably it for the safe states. As for the Democratic Party, they would have won California, as well as Hawaii, as well as Illinois, as well as the state of New York. And that's probably going to be all of the safe states, only 3 states being, big blue states here. Now for the Republicans, likely margin states, Kansas, because, Democrats did run a good candidate, Republicans ran a bad candidate. I think in this scenario, Laura Kelly, would have not done nearly as well as she ended up doing, and you probably wouldn't have had the same third-party candidate either. And I think that would have gone by a likely margin. Iowa would have also been a likely margin. Ohio would have been a likely margin there. Georgia probably would have been a likely margin as well. Brian Kemp would have done a lot better. The race wouldn't have been as nationalized as it ended up being with Stacey Abrams, as well as Wisconsin probably would have been a likely margin, to be honest. I think Scott Walker would have done a lot better, and that's, when you're correlating it to the Senate election, having that as tilt blue, you would have seen a pretty big shift towards the Republican Party. I think that would have helped Scott Walker there. Let's see here. Now, some states for the Democrats, I think they would have won Oregon by lean margin with Kate Brown. She was only in a 7-point race, and that was a blue wave year. With a red wave year, she would have been, in only like a D+4 race. Now, as for the New Mexico race, I'm going to put that at likely Democrat because she did end up winning by like 15 points, so I think she probably still would have won. With Jared Polis in Colorado, I think similar thing. Colorado is, pretty far gone for the Republican Party. Minnesota, I think Tim Walz would have won by a closer margin. I think he still would have won, but it would have been by a closer margin. Gretchen Whitmer, it's kind of hard to tell. I think she would have won by a tilt margin, but this, it's again, really hard to tell. Pennsylvania, I think, would have gone still to Tom Wolf. I think probably by like a likely to lean margin. Tom Wolf is quite a popular governor. I think that Rhode Island also would have been a likely margin state for the Democrats. Now, slipping to some Republicans, I think Florida would have been a lean Republican state. Arizona would have been actually a safe Republican state, of course. Nevada, I think, would have been a lean Republican state. Connecticut, I think, would have been a tilt Republican state. This was a very close race, even in a blue wave year. I think in a red wave year, they could have won this race. And Maine, I think I'm going to put this at lean Democrat. So overall, Republicans would have flipped Connecticut. They would have flipped. I think that's actually all the flips. They got a lot of flips in 2010 and 2014. Democrats wouldn't have flipped any races, but Republicans would have flipped Connecticut and gotten very close in a lot of other states. Now, looking at the House map, now this is a little bit difficult to do. I'm not going to do margins, but this is the actual 2018 results, we can see Democrats got 236 seats. I think it was actually 235 for some reason. I don't know if it has 236 here. But let's just see the seats that would have flipped towards the Republicans. Well, Colin Peterson's seat would have flipped, I think. You wouldn't have had the 2 Iowa seats that flipped. This is, pretty buggy on 270 to win. You would have had the 2 Iowa seats that flipped here as well. Those would not have flipped towards the Democrats, and David Loebsack probably still would have won there. You would have had this North Carolina seat that would have gone towards the Democratic Party. You would have had probably some of these other seats too. You would definitely have not had a seat like Oklahoma's 5th go towards the Democratic Party. You would not have had New Mexico's 2nd district go towards the Democratic Party. Actually, let's go down to these competitive races here if we can, because, I don't want to zoom in on those California races. Martha McSally's seat probably would have gone Republican. Arizona's 1st probably would have gone Republican as well as David Valladeo's seat. I think he would have won his seat. I think that the 39th would have stayed Republican. The 45th probably would have stayed. I think it probably would have stayed blue. The 49th probably would have stayed. Probably would have gone towards the Democrats. I think Florida's 7th probably would have gone to the Democrats as well. I think looking down here, Georgia's 6th would have gone towards the Republicans instead. You would have had Illinois 6th, probably would have still gone to the... Actually, Republican probably still would have won. Illinois 14th, Republican would have won. Kansas 3rd, the Republican probably would have kept his seat, probably would have held on. Maine's 2nd, Bruce Poliquin would have held on. Michigan's 8th, the Republican would have won this seat. I don't know why that is Democrat. Tim Walz, this seat would have flipped toward the Republicans just like it did in real life. Minnesota's 2nd would have flipped. Eric Paulson, this is Minnesota's 3rd district. Okay. Going down here further, North Carolina's 8th would have flipped towards the Republican Party. New Hampshire's 1st, I think, would have flipped towards the Republicans as well, and you had a lot of New Jersey flipped here as well. New Jersey's 3rd district, I don't think would have flipped to Andy Kim. New Jersey's 5th district, which is a district that flipped in 2016, I think would have stayed, but I don't think that New Jersey's 7th would have flipped. Jackie Rosen in Nevada, I think this would have been an open seat since Jackie Rosen ran for Senate. I think this would have stayed Republican, but Nevada's 4th probably would have stayed Republican, I think, or probably would have gone towards the Republicans. This is another flip from 2016. Peter King would have won his seat. New York's 11th would have gone a Republican instead of going to Max Rose. Sean Maloney probably would have lost his seat. A lot of flips here. New York's 19th probably would not have gone towards the Democrats. Claudia Tenney would not have lost her seat. She's now a representative. You had these weird Pennsylvania seats because of the redistricting. I'm not going to talk about those. South Carolina's 1st would not have flipped. Texas's 7th would not have flipped. The 32nd would not have flipped. Utah's 4th would not have flipped. Virginia's 2nd would not have flipped. The 7th would not have flipped. The 10th, I think it probably wouldn't have flipped, but it could have been close. Washington's 8th would not have flipped. And so that's all the seats. Maybe I'm forgetting some, but we can look at the overall numbers here, seeing what it was. We can see here Republicans are at 233. I think there probably would have been some additional ones. They probably would have won the 25th district, of course. They would have won that district. The 45th, they would have won. The 48th, they would have won. The 49th, they probably would have won as well. The 7th, looking back, this would have been a really close one. She only won by 3 percentage points. So I think, honestly, looking back at it again, it probably could have flipped towards the Republican Party. Oh, Florida's 26th and 27th. Didn't see those. Those would have not flipped towards the Democrats. And I think that's probably it. Republicans would have won effectively all of these seats. Michigan's 11th wouldn't have flipped to Alyssa Slotkin either. Minnesota's 3rd, this one's hard to tell because Hillary Clinton did win it by a lot, but so did the Republican incumbent, so I'm just going to give him the win here as well. New Jersey 2nd, that would have gone to the Republican as well. You had, of course, Jeffrey Andrew eventually switched to the Republicans, but in this scenario, I think that he would have lost as a Democrat. And so that looks like it's about all of these seats here. And so we're looking at it added up. We can see Republicans are all the way at 243 seats. I could honestly see them getting more than that, to be honest. I could see them winning Iowa 2nd, maybe Wisconsin's 3rd, even if they did really well. Maybe, some of these other seats, just going around here. But overall, Republicans would have absolutely swamped the Democrats for the third midterm in a row. Republicans would have almost had a supermajority in the Senate. They would have had a record number of seats in the House, and Hillary Clinton would effectively be a lame duck president, quite an unpopular president, and it would not have gone well for her in the midterm. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.